Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about the Stranger Things chapter, or chapter 13. This chapter I would argue was the most important in Dead by Daylight's history, second only to maybe the Halloween chapter, which brought along the first license. This chapter, to the best of my knowledge, brought along the biggest influx of new players. Licenses are clearly a big pull for Dead by Daylight, but this was a bit different, because it was a license that was currently extremely relevant. The most recent license really prior to Stranger Things was Saw, which is early 2000s, and so this was a big deal, a currently airing and incredibly popular show, and it was coming to Dead by Daylight. Even thinking about it now, that's pretty crazy. In many ways, I'd like to think Stranger Things joining the game potentially made other unlikely licenses prior, like Silent Hill and Resident Evil, a lot more likely. So regardless of what you thought about this chapter, I think it's undeniably Dead by Daylight's most important entry, for the sheer number of new eyes it brought to the game. So, the reveal. I remember seeing the announcement, and it was one of 2 times I audibly said, "Oh wow," to a chapter reveal. The trailer dropped on August 19th, 2019, and currently sits on a healthy 8 million views on YouTube. The trailer began with a view of a hallway, which quickly shifted into a destroyed hallway. I think it was around this point in watching it for the first time that I thought, no way. We pass through a destroyed set of doors, and we see the upside down tentacles crawling along the floor and walls, as a low growl can be heard in the distance, and a long and distorted shadow slowly appears on the wall. Then into the frame crawls the Demogorgon in all its glory. It opens up its mouth and screeches right at us as the Stranger Things logo appears. Just as it all seems to be over, a TV screen pops up, and we see Steve and Nancy waving at us, before running off, panicked, as a Demogorgon's screech can be heard in the distance. This was a big deal, again, not just because the license was big, but this was also set up to be the biggest content release the game had ever seen. A killer, a map, and 2 survivors this time round. 3 days later, on August 22nd, there was a reveal stream. It was also pretty revealing. The devs mentioned how open Netflix was to the idea of Stranger Things being in Dead by Daylight, and said that they were not only aware of the game, but also fans in some cases, and happy to help with assets, visuals, writing, and more. They mentioned in the stream that things such as the hooks were designed directly based on the Upside Down. They were also the first kind to have moving parts, with rats crawling about on them. During the time of development, Stranger Things 3 wasn't actually quite out yet, and apparently they were also given some Stranger Things 3 spoilers. There was also a ton of cool concept art they showed, and I think it was really clear in this moment just how much effort and care was put into this. There was also cool little secrets they revealed, such as the fact that the Demogorgon model, when first implemented into the game, was smaller than Dwight, and so they had to make it bigger and a bit more to scale. I don't know, I kinda wish we could have seen the tiny Demogorgon running about the map. The survivors that were picked were Nancy and Steve, and they were picked largely because of the character's age, but also their arcs in the show. Many of the cast is of course kids, which can't really appear in a game like Dead by Daylight, so they went with Steve and Nancy, which I think made a lot of sense. So we got a look at the models, and then finally the perks. There were 9 perks revealed in the stream, which again is more than we'd ever gotten up to this point. Most of these perks stayed true to how they are today, with some interesting development names, like Cruel Limits being called Cruel Confinement. That was a good change, and that was about it. An exciting and eventful stream. So a little over a week later, the upcoming content releases on the 3.2.0 PTB for PC. As always, let's first talk about the lore. For the lore, we got some really exciting... Oh. Wait, is that it? The design was probably one of the best parts of the chapter, staying very faithful to the character's looks in the show. When I heard the Demogorgon was coming to DBD, I immediately thought, huh, that's gonna look weird. How are they gonna make this otherworldly creature look normal whilst it carries you around and hooks you? But they did make it work. They had to completely remake its animations, as obviously Demo is a completely different thing than most of the human characters in the game, whose animations are far more similar. They made it look quite normal, despite the demos in the show often moving around on all 4s, or generally being more animalistic. They retained those qualities whilst also giving a more consistent movement on 2 legs, bringing it in line with regular DBD gameplay. I believe for the main visuals though, they got most of the stuff directly from Netflix. So the Demogorgon you see in game is literally the same one as in the show. As in like the visuals are the exact same. I'm pretty sure at least. The design was great, but what about the power design? That's always a big part for the killers. Demo's power included two main parts. The Shred Attack, an ability that would have Demo open its mouth and claws and pounce a considerable distance, and at a considerable speed. This power would let it shut down loops quickly, and leap across long walls, making it good in areas where survivors could typically outrun a killer normally. The primary power was its portals, an ability meant for map traversal and the shortening of chases. These portals would connect two or more points on the map, and could be placed on any flat surface. Once placed, you could tunnel between them, traversing the upside down, and arriving in the next location within seconds, receiving a short duration of the undetectable effect whilst you did. Finally, its perks were not the most powerful, I do have to say, but fitting and decent. Surge allowed you to damage generators by downing survivors with a basic attack. Cruel Limits allowed you to block vaults in a small radius when a generator was completed. Finally, Mindbreaker applied a small duration of exhausted when a survivor interacted with a generator, mainly generator-based stuff, all appropriate and effective on the new Hawkins map, and in line with Demo's mysterious and otherworldly theme. For the survivors, they had a bigger challenge, as there were no assets or scans available of Steve or Nancy, as obviously they're played by real people and they aren't CGI. So the in-game models were made completely from scratch and based on visual references. I think they did a really good job, taking the classic look of the characters from Season 1, later adding more iconic clothing options. They mentioned in the behind the scenes video that the main focus for Steve's design was the hair, of course, and Nancy's her face and facial structure. The survivor perks were pretty spot on for the characters too. Steve filled a largely altruistic role with his perks. Babysitter was an alternative to perks like Borrowed Time, and allowed you to distract the killer upon saving a teammate, revealing your aura and hiding your teammate's scratch marks. His perk Camaraderie would make camping harder by pausing the hook timer, and Second Wind would let you instantly heal a health state if you'd healed a teammate fully prior. Nancy's perk situated her into a team assisting role, focusing on coordination and objectives. Inner Strength got you to break a totem, and get a free heal in a locker as a result. Better Together revealed your aura to others when you worked on a gen, and Fixated allowed you to see your own scratch marks, and also walk slightly faster. It's worth also mentioning the sound design, with Demo having a really cool chase soundtrack, and the lobby theme having this mysterious vibe to it. Again, you can really tell they went all out for this. Not only this, but the actual sounds of Demo are all actually directly from the show too. So, sound on the whole felt perfect. The map that released with this chapter was the Underground Complex, part of the new Hawkins National Laboratory realm. In all honesty, I was kind of disappointed when this was revealed as the map. I didn't dislike the idea completely of the Hawkins lab, but I was hoping we would get somewhere a bit more interesting or vibrant. Potentially a section of the Hawkins town, or the Hawkins High School where many of the Season 1 events take place, or possibly even the new Starcourt Mall. I don't want to bash on this too much, because it's actually a pretty cool map. I just never found this location to be particularly representative of the show and its feel as a whole. The ambience on the map is honestly spot on. There's this creepy and mysterious feel as you wander the halls of the underground complex. However, the actual layout never sat quite right with me. One of the reasons why I don't feel it fit was that it never really felt like it had a distinct layout in the show. So when it was transferred over to Dead by Daylight, the only room I really clicked with was the portal room, which I do have to say is pretty stunning. With all this said, and my personal indifference to this map's gameplay, it's gonna suck to see it go. It's one of those things where, for me at least, I never thought I liked or valued it that much, but now that it's going, I'm pretty sad, and I'm starting to see that its place in the game was definitely valuable. So, goodbye Hawkins. I never loved you, but I can say I respected you. Okay, so that's all the design stuff, but what was the PTB actually like? Well, unlike a few of these other retrospectives, I don't specifically recall there being any major complaints or controversies. Nothing seemed particularly overpowered or unfair. In fact, I think the Stranger Things PTB and release was pretty much average all round, in terms of the power scaling of things. It was a very middle of the road chapter, and didn't shake things up, but just added to a lot of things, which was and totally is fine. It was mainly just small tweaks to abilities and powers, and perks and such from PTB to live. I think this was in part that it was a very polished chapter, and there'd been a lot of care put into it. The biggest complaint I think wasn't even gameplay related, it was just that the PTB servers were kinda bad. I believe it was around the time dedicated servers were getting implemented. It's also worth noting, as a little addition, that this PTB brought along 2 new status effects. oblivious and undetectable. Both of these would be applied to the new killer, the Demogorgon, but also the new reworked Freddy. So, the release. It's the 17th of September 2019. Demogorgon receives some nerfs in the form of a slightly increased shred cooldown, and a small nerf to his portals, but they can't be placed as close to exit gates anymore. You know, it was stuff like that. Very small things. There were some map issues, like hook distancing, and apparently something that lets you take the game hostage, but it was all fixed. Overall, everything was looking great. There was nothing crazy happening, like being able to spin in a circle and reveal Ghostface, or Oni's power letting him 180 round loops. The main complaints I seem to remember was the slightly confusing map layout, being indoor and also having multiple floors. I seem to also remember a few complaints about inner strength. Lots of people were angry you could heal in lockers now. I think that was more of just a first impressions thing though, because let's be honest, it's not OP. Aside that, it was all very solid. Demo I think has always been one of the most consistently balanced killers, and is currently the most balanced killer in the game. So yeah, again, everything felt very middle of the road balance wise, and I'm pretty sure this was all intentional also. I think to an extent they were trying to play it safe, and just make sure this whole chapter experience was a good one. Because at the end of the day, this was probably going to be the first thing a lot of people saw of the game, so it was important to make sure it was accessible to everyone. Okay, now for the review. 2 years and 2 months on, this chapter really made its mark, and still will, as it's not completely going. The only thing actually getting removed is the Hawkins map. This chapter established a new meaning for what a chapter could be. It brought along amazing adaptations of greatly loved characters, a set of solid perks, and a huge wave of excitement that brought along the biggest amount of hype I think I've ever seen for Dead by Daylight. And it was deserving of it all. As Stranger Things is phased out, we can see some changes in game. For example, the perk names have changed. Surge is now Jolt, Cruel Limits is now Claustrophobia, Mindbreaker is now Fearmonger, Babysitter is now Guardian, Camaraderie is now Kinship, Second Wind is now Renewal, Better Together is now Situational Awareness, bit of a mouthful. Fixated is now Self-Aware, and Inner Strength is now Inner Healing. These perks are also now available on all characters as universal perks. It's nice that everyone gets to use these perks now, but it's also a shame that we're losing the old names. Because I'm not too keen on the new names if I'm honest. There's something about the word Jolt that doesn't sit right with me. It's probably just because we've known them as different names for so long though. Despite this being a frustrating situation, it's been handled pretty well. As the first license to come and go, the impact it made was undeniable. And to anyone who didn't get to interact with it all, I hope this video helped out a bit. Alright, well that's gonna do it. I do hope you enjoyed, and be sure to drop your own thoughts on the Stranger Things chapter down below. Maybe you can even drop an F for the first chapter to leave the game. Goodbye Stranger Things, you will be missed.